With more than 6,000 small and micro-cap companies listed, if you're looking for the next apple at the earliest stage, then Channel Check truly is the orchard. The listed companies support Channel Check, so it's free for you, the potential investor, to gain access to institutional quality research from FINRA licensed analysts, advanced market data, industry reports, news, and a growing catalog of videos and webcasts. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and register for Channel Check so you're always up to date on what's going on at the small and microcap data place. Welcome to the virtual Roadshow series presented by Channel Check. This Roadshow features Derrick Weyrauch, President and CEO of Palladium One Mining, TSXV ticker symbol PDM, OTC ticker symbol NKORF. Following a formal presentation, Derrick is joined by Mark Reichman, Senior Research Analyst for Noble Capital Markets, a FINRA-licensed, SEC-registered broker-dealer, for a Q&A session featuring questions that were submitted by the live audience. You can find Mark's research on Palladium One on channelcheck.com or by clicking the link in the description. With that, I am pleased to present Derrick Weyrauch.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here once again with Channel Check and the Noble Capital. Today, please refer to our forward-looking statements because I will be making some, and you can find the statement on our website. Palladium One is an exploration stage company focused on discovering environmentally and socially conscious metals for clean air. Our goal is to have a net zero carbon palladium and nickel mining operation, possibly both in Canada and in Finland. Our current market capitalization is approximately $70 million. At the beginning of March, we had $20 million cash in the bank, so very well funded for our planned activities over the course of 2021 and well into 2022. About 40% of our stock is held by institutional investors, and we've research coverage from Noble Capital, Mark, and Research Capital in Toronto. Our leadership team has over 100 years of combined experience focusing in on deposits where they're magmatic sulfides, specifically nickel, copper, palladium, platinum. Very well-rounded experience with lots of discovery success in the past years. As I said, we are fully focused, or rather fully funded, and we are exploration stage. But what's really important, I think, when an investor looks at us is that we are very much thematically focused with some very hot commodities being nickel and palladium in particular, as well as copper. Palladium right now is trading at over $2,100 or $2,800 per ounce, about $1,000 premium to that of gold, and has very robust fundamental demand with a 9-year supply deficit. Nickel and copper are very thematically relevant as it relates to the electrification of mobility, and the demand forecasts are quite exceptional. Our objective is, and we have put together 100% owned district scale projects in tier 1 jurisdictions. And what we're really trying to do is position ourselves for a future takeout where a larger mining company can come in and achieve the scale that they would be looking for. Our primary focus is in Finland, where we believe we possibly have one of the largest palladium dominant projects of its kind in the first world. And that is largely where our focus and attention is over the course of this year. However, we have recently had a very high-grade nickel sulfide discovery in Canada at our Tycho project, which has really caught the market's attention of late. And I'll be discussing that as well. Both of these projects, as I said, are district scale. They're quite large with significant room for upside. And we are very actively drilling currently on both projects in order to demonstrate that resource growth potential to get the interest of the larger or major mining company. Our key milestones or catalysts, if you will, over the course of 2021 and into 2022 are drilling. In Finland, we have started back in October a 17,500 meter drilling program, a phase 2 infill program to define a resource at our Kakua South location. And as well, we are in the process of and have actually just finished the field work related to expanding the strike length of our mineralized horizon from about 4 kilometers up to 7 kilometers in length. So extremely long strike length, which bodes well for a large-scale project and building out the tons. But most recently, this past week, we actually had an announcement that will shed lots of light with the potential down dip extensions and making the scale of the projects even larger. But drilling is the key focus in Finland. We anticipate continuing throughout the current year. We'll have a very steady stream of news flow coupled with potential strike length extensions from geophysics, as well as phase 2 metallurgical test work program results. In Canada, it's largely the same thing. We want to follow up and have been following up the discovery success from October through December of last year. We are currently in the field drilling the Tycho high-grade discovery, and we will be suspending drilling there very shortly in light of the spring thawing conditions, both in Canada, actually in Finland. And we'll be doing some additional geophysics and hope to resume drilling activities later this summer following a regional airborne geophysics program that we're doing. So in total, we have about 27,000 meters of drilling budgeted for the current year, as well as a lot of geophysics work and target development, which we believe will give us a very steady stream of news flow and catalysts in the coming 12 to 18 months. Zooming in a little bit in terms of our project portfolio, in Finland we have 2 projects, the Läntinen Koillismaa, our LK project, and adjoining it the KS project. They're completely different targets, and our focus is very much at the LK or Läntinen Koillismaa project. You see that at the top of this image on the left-hand side, where we have about 38 kilometers of what's known as basal contact of mineralization. And it's disseminated sulfides that we're looking at. We believe this is one of the largest deposits of its type in the first world. We already have an existing pit-constrained 43-101 resource that is over 1 million ounces palladium equivalent at very superior grades. It's analogous to some degree to the deposits of the Plant Reef in the Bushveld complex in South Africa, and it's 100% owned, only half of which has any royalties on the property. Our KS project is much earlier stage, but it's very interesting. It's a 20,000 hectare package that hosts a regional scale dike. Think of a large garden hose that placed the mineralization up at LK. Here the target is massive sulfide mineralization, so very high value rock units. It'll be at depth. It's earlier stage. We're not focused there right now, but we will be spending more time and effort on that project in the coming month and the coming years. But right now, as I say, LK is our focus, and at the very top of the project is the Kakua zone. And this here is just focusing in on that Kakua zone, and it's really the meat of the story right now. Here we've had some major, very significant discoveries over the course of the last year. Our existing resource is outlined in the yellow dashed lines. It's about 1 kilometer worth of strike length going east to west. And in the background of that blue box that it's in is the chargeability or geophysics results that were used to define and drill out that resource. But to the right of it, this Kakua South zone that's outlined in the yellow dashed lines was a discovery that we did last year in 2020. And it's turned out to be quite impressive. As I said, we've now proven we have over 4 kilometers worth of strike length, so it's well over 2 miles of strike length on this, and we have been actively drilling. We've got about 46 holes drilled into it so far that have been returning extremely good grade over very mineable widths and effectively from surface. There's very little overburden here. What we're looking at is an open pit mining scenario. And the question that it quite frankly exists is, if within this Kakua pit we have roughly a million, 2 ounces currently, how much might we have over this larger contact? So that's why we're drilling it actively. We're trying to define the resource in an effort to bring out another resource report and add several million ounces to our existing endowment. But not only that, we are, as I mentioned earlier, undertaking geophysics, and we're looking at extensions both to the west inside that blue box of the southern part and to the east on the right-hand side. And we believe that the geophysics will prove that we have potentially another 3 kilometers worth of strike length. So we could have up to about 7 kilometers of strike length, shallow mineralization. So we have a very large target here. Our target is over 100 million tons of ore. And as I indicated previously, we started the first phase of drilling 17,500 kilometers in this first section, and we'll be looking to expand that as we move forward. Of real importance is that the infrastructure where Kakua is excellent. And if you squint a little bit, you can probably see in the background of the Google image here that there is actually a highway running on the east side, or rather west side of the project. There's ample power. We have high voltage power on our LK project, as well as ample water. So we're very well positioned. We're high and dry, close to infrastructure, all things that bode very well for future development scenarios. And if we zoom out a little bit on the top image here, we're looking at the total property package, and the Kakua area is up on the top of that image. Those 2 blue boxes are the extensions that I was referring to previously. And what's had the market very excited over the last number of months as this discovery has been unfolding is that strike extension and the possibility to add tons to our resource endowment. But this week we really had another step change, and that is we've identified 2 zones of mineralization within that Kakua South area. One, the high grade, the high value platinum group elements with the palladium, platinum, gold, and as well a more base metal rich nickel copper zone lying on top of it. And you can see that on the image on the bottom right hand side here. And what that does is, if you think of drawing a big V shape here for your open pit, by having that mineralization in the upper zone, what it allows us to do is reduce the future mining costs, because that material may not be waste anymore. That could be processable ore, and therefore actually generate a return and dramatically increasing the economics of a pit. But not only that, because that zone exists and we wouldn't be having waste material there, what it allows us the opportunity to do is actually deepen the pit. So here in this section, you can see we've got 3 holes defining the zone. And what we can do is we can do another drill hole or 2 or 3, I don't know how many at this point in time, going to the south over on the left-hand side of the image to extend the mineralization to depth for that mining scenario. So not only are we adding the potential for tons laterally, we're also adding at depth. Our planning initially was to target mineralization and a mining sequence to only about 200 meters in depth. Based on this new information with this upper zone, we're now looking at targeting down to about 300 meters of depth. And we'll see, to the extent that that upper zone increases in mineralization, it may allow us to pull more. So the potential here is that this thing is growing quite significantly, and we're extremely pleased with the results here. But by way of reference, I'll just zoom into the Kakua area where that resource is in the red circle there, the existing resource that was published, the NI 43-101. That was modeled within an economic pit using various recovery rates, revenue assumptions, etc. And as you can see on the right-hand side in this section view, the mineralization comes to surface, it pulls to the bottom of the pit, and potentially could go even deeper. The deepest part of the pit that we modeled previously was about 275 meters, And we think based on the work that we've done, that will be obviously pulling deeper. So we're very pleased with that. And, importantly, we have a 3-to-1 ratio of palladium versus platinum in our metal mix. So if you look in the indicated category here at the bottom, about 1.2 grams per ton of this material are precious metals or PGEs, palladium, platinum, and gold. 2/3 of which would be the palladium. But we also have a nice nickel and especially a copper kicker to increase the overall economic rate. And this was all calculated at only $1,100 per ounce in the current market environment, where the palladium prices escalated up to $2,800 per ounce. Obviously, the value on a per ton basis has increased quite dramatically, potentially improving the economics of the project quite substantially. So we're really pleased about that, and we think that's what's driving a lot of the attention that we have right now. If I step over to our KS project and step out in the imagery, you can see some of the historic geophysics work that was done. And you can see there's a very large geophysical anomaly, gravity anomaly, that runs across Finland. It actually outcrops on the east side of this image on the Russian border, porpoises through the country, and is believed to be the emplacement path of that magma flow that deposited this large puddle, if you will, of magma on the surface, creating the LK project and the entire Koillismaa complex. So we, last year, we claimed the western third of that, where we believe it adjoins the LK project, and we will be following up the work there. But in the meantime, what's happened is that the Finnish Geological Survey has drilled a 2,000-meter deep hole just off to the east of our project, and they have proven that this has been populated with magmatic sulfide mineralization. There's mafic, ultramafic rocks in here. It's the first drill hole to actually test that dike, and obviously that's a real game changer for this project. So we're very pleased with that, just because of its scale on a global context. And importantly, the tenor of the metals that we have in the sulfide mineralization and LK is extremely high. And at KS, the target is a massive sulfide, so a lot more sulfide material. And based on that high tenor value that we have at LK, we believe there's a significant opportunity here to find some sulfide units that are going to be extremely high value. And that's really the big game hunting aspect of this particular project. But from a risk reward perspective, our focus, first of all, is LK, because there we can add value to the shareholders on really an expedited basis, and the clear path to do so, as I hope I demonstrated to you. But the KS project, that Conolith dike, has similarities to Norilsk, largest nickel camp in the world, as well as the eastern deeps portion of Voisey's Bay. So very interesting, and happy that we have it. In Canada, we've got also a very interesting situation that we're quite pleased about, and has got a lot of inbound calls happening, and that's our Tycho project. As I mentioned, we had a discovery in November, December, and we intersected up to 10% nickel equivalent over 4 meters from surface. And we have 13 discovery holes that we conducted, and they all hit massive sulfides over strike length of about 270 meters. That occurred at the Smoke Lake zone on the very far eastern side of the property package here. The property itself is about 200 square kilometers. It's quite large. It hosts the bulldozer intrusion here, which is, again, that big magma flow that comes up. And we have other nickel hits on this property at the RJ and the Tycho zone. So this is a very hot area, but it's very underexplored. And we are actively working this Smoke Lake target to take it to depth. Our other project in Ontario is the Disraeli project north of Thunder Bay. It's also a conolith or dike-like system that has similarities to what we're looking at KS, but it's much earlier stage. In Canada, our real focus is the Tycho project, where we already have demonstrated evidence of very high grade sulfides at surface. As you can see in the section here on the bottom right-hand side, our first intercept is less than 25 meters from surface. Very unusual to get this special type of rock at such shallow depths. The geophysics that we've done subsequent to the initial discovery work suggests that there's potential for a very large deposition. There's a large southwest plunging magnetic body at depth, whereas Smoke Lake, the target itself, you can see it's a very, very small portion of this anomaly. And what makes the discovery very interesting and significant is that we also have a very rich sulfide mineralization here, where we have a 2-to-1 ratio of nickel versus copper. In the market now, where nickel's trading over $7 per pound, it is an extremely high value material that we have found. And most recently, since the discovery, not only did we, announce various drill holes, as you can see here, from 10%, 8.7%, 7.5% nickel equivalent. We also got back in and did some geophysics to define some plates, or basically imagery as to where we should be pointing the drill bit. And the plate that we're showing here, this rectangular image, is the focus of the current drilling program. So the work we did initially was largely centered on what we're defining or terming the upper plate, where we have a lot of hits, even though we had a nice 6.3% nickel equivalent hit 270 meters away. But we are currently drilling this plate. We anticipate doing that perhaps for another week or so, until the spring thaw, and then we will evaluate the results of that. But the plate is open for extension to the northwest, as you can see here. As well, we have that large magnetic body at depth. So a lot more work to be done here, potential for some very significant tonnage. And so, in summary, I think, we're extremely well positioned. We're fully funded. Our budget for this year is about $11.5 million. We anticipate ending the year with $8 million in the treasury. And we're thematically exposed to some metals that have incredible amounts of fundamental demand. Are very thematically relevant because of the fact that they are dealing with metals for clean air and carbon mitigation. And again, we are looking at district scale projects that are 100% owned in tier 1 jurisdictions. Finland was voted one of the best mining jurisdictions globally for investment repeatedly, Canada as well. So our focus is to develop these projects and add ounces in value on a per share basis for our shareholders.
I'm Mark Reichman, the Noble Senior Analyst who covers Palladium One Mining. I'll be reading the questions submitted for Derrick's response. So the first question is, how long before the palladium supply shortages ease, and are the catalysts more on the supply or demand side?
Well, what we've seen is that, and I have to caution here, because we got to talk pre and post COVID, things have changed a little bit, but pre-COVID, the global mine supply for palladium was just under 7 million ounces, whereas the consumption in the automotive sector was just shy of 10 million ounces. So very robust demand, and the automotive industry far outstripping the mine supply, which has stripped down the investment holdings in ETFs and stockpile inventory. And there's basically been a 9-year supply deficit for palladium, largely driven by demand. Supply is a very difficult thing because over 90% of palladium is actually supplied as a byproduct of other mining activities, mainly from nickel in Norilsk, for example, which represents roughly 40% of global supply, or platinum coming out of South Africa. So even with increasing demand, existing miners are inhibited or unable to meet that supply. We need new mines coming online in order to meet the supply. Because if your primary product is nickel, for example, you can't just turn up your production without affecting your entire operations, because there isn't just a pod sitting on the side that is has a label of palladium on it. So it's a complicated situation. I think the fundamental supply-demand curve is very robust, and especially now as we think about the opening up of the economy again, and all the pent-up demand for new vehicles, et cetera, going forward. That there'll be a lot of consumer appetite, which is going to squeeze the supply that much more, and possibly we'll have even more robust pricing than we have now.
The next question is, when did Eric Sprott become a shareholder, and could you shed more light on the shareholder base and warrant structure?
So Eric became a shareholder in, I believe it was May of 2019, a couple months after I joined the company. We did a small financing of about $1.3 million in order to validate the assets and prepare the technical report, et cetera. And he's been very supportive since then, and has obviously participated to a large extent in late 2019 with the financing that we then did, as well as he exercised virtually all of his warrants in December of 2020. So he currently owns about 16% of the company. We do have some warrants actually that are expiring in May. There's a small amount left. So we did in 2020 have a fairly large warrant overhang, and you would have seen a tremendous amount of volume, but 68 million shares trade in the latter part of 2020 as a result of those warrants being exercised, because some of the large portion of them were actually expiring. And we did, as part of the financing, we concluded in February, have a half warrant attached to that with a strike price of 45 cents. We're currently trading at roughly 32 cents. So we're still a little bit out of the money on those, but all the pre-existing warrants have either been exercised or converted with only a very little overhang remaining, which would be several million shares. That's about it.
Then the next question is, what impact will electric vehicles have on demand for platinum and palladium?
Well, depends what type of electric vehicle you're talking about. So what we're seeing is the adoption is for the hybrid vehicle because of all the constraints associated with the pure battery electric vehicle. And that engine or that car still requires all the emission control devices that a conventional car does. And as a matter of fact, because of the way the engine operates, we're seeing that there's greater loading of palladium on a per unit basis in a hybrid vehicle than in a conventional internal combustion engine. So as the market transitions and there's more hybrids that are acquired by consumers, we're actually seeing an increasing demand cycle there. Platinum is more driven by the hydrogen-powered fuel cell vehicle. I still think we're looking for a little bit of adoption there, certainly on a consumer level, but there are more and more inroads happening on the hydrogen space as it relates to commercial fleets, even mining equipment for that matter.
Well, I think you addressed this in your presentation, but the potential strike length appears to have room to increase at Kakua South. What about the depth potential?
Yeah, I think I addressed that, but as I said, this thing could get very deep. I think it's really just a matter of, there's going to be an economic limit based on the grade. You can only make an open pit so big, and you're going to have a waste to ore ratio that you have to manage. This upper zone that we've now identified is dealing with that nicely, and looks like it's going to allow us to deepen the potential pits. How deep the mineralization goes at this point, we don't know, but it's completely open at depth and open along strike. So there's still lots to grow. And again, we're focusing on a very small segment of the overall property package. LK, we've got 38 kilometers of basal contact, and we know it's substantially all mineralized. It's just a matter of zoning into the grades, or pods, if you will, of greater tonnage and greater grades. And we're really focusing here currently on let's call it 6 to 8 kilometers of much larger property package.
And from the same person, how are results at Kakua South comparing to grades at the original Kakua deposit?
They're actually comparing very favorably. So our focus has been on the western side of Kakua South, because we've been under the belief that Kakua itself was slip displaced and shifted north and came off of, if you will, or separated away from Kakua South. From a geochemical perspective, we're seeing basically the same metal ratios, very similar widths. The orientation's a little bit different at Kakua. The dip is about 30 degrees roughly, so fairly flat. Whereas we're seeing steeper dip or incline in Kakua South, so it's a little bit different. But we've picked up that upper zone, so that's dealing with the steeper dip. What we are now going to be looking at is stepping down dip or south, if you look at the images, and drilling and looking for that upper zone at Kakua as well, because we know based on hole 7 that we drilled last year, we hit over 40 meters, well over 2 gram material at the very southwest corner of the conceptual pit. Certainly implies that we can extend the mineralization at depth, and if we can keep extending that mineralization at depth, then find the upper zone, you know, the economics at the existing Kakua are going to potentially improve and change quite dramatically. So we've got a lot going on, but it looks to be basically the same material on that western side as Kakua itself.
And the next question is, do you plan to spend more money in Canada? But I would like to enlarge that to maybe ask about how are you thinking about capital allocation, you know, given the promise that each of these projects holds?
Yeah, so the raise that we did in February is $15 million, $12.5 million of which is dedicated for Finland and overheads. $2.5 million is dedicated to Canada, and we're keeping that allocation for right now. The reality is that I don't want to commit to spending until I have fully developed drill targets. So in Canada with Tycho, we had the great discovery. We followed that up immediately with the geophysics. We're back in the field right now. We're drilling based on the results from that geophysics. You saw the plates in the presentation. As soon as we finish this drill campaign, we'll be back out with more geophysics to try and expand the plate locally at Smoke Lake, and that's fully funded at this point in time, as well as a regional airborne survey. So we're going to do a VTEM survey over the entire 130-kilometer property package, and looking for more of these electromagnetic anomalies, as was discovered at Smoke Lake, and where we're getting all of the success. So, you know, if we can find another couple smokes, that would be great, but I don't want to commit money until we find them. And once we've found and developed some targets, we'll allocate to potentially additional capital as appropriate.
The next question is, the presentation mentions it is one of the largest palladium projects in the world, referring to LK. What are some of the others?
Yeah, LK is not a pure palladium project. It's polymetallic, so there's a number of different metals, but palladium is certainly the dominant metal. And quite typically, even with the other deposits in the world, they're polymetallic. They've got a number of different metals, and most of production of palladium is actually as a byproduct of other mining activities, about 90% of the global supply, and it comes from nickel, predominantly out of Russia, or platinum mining out of South Africa. So the construct of the question isn't quite appropriate, given that you know, so much of production is a byproduct of other mining. But certainly outside of Russia or South Africa, in terms of a project that's polymetallic with palladium dominance, where based on our initial numbers, we're looking at roughly 65% of revenue ultimately coming from palladium, we believe it is the largest of its type globally.
Now, the company's reported impressive drilling results at both LK and Tycho, but the stock hasn't seemed to respond. What will it take to get the stock up?
Well, I don't know that the stock hasn't responded. It's actually done extremely well. The discovery of LK was announced last summer, so summer of 2020, and our share price at that time was down in around 10 or 12 cents. I forget exactly what it is, and we're up at about 31 cents now. So it's moved quite a bit. And most recently, the discovery at Tycho occurred or was announced in and around the late November, December timeframe when our share price was around 15 cents. So we've had a double even from that point in time. So I think share price performance has been extremely good. I think those that invested early probably have over 800% return over the last 2 years. And I think there's more to come.
The next question is, do you have any confidentiality agreements signed for projects in Finland or Canada? And if so, please provide details to the extent appropriate.
Yes, so signing NDAs and having people look at your projects is ordinary course in the mining business. Quite a lot of companies do it especially if they're project generators and they're thinking about vending off a project through a joint venture or otherwise. It's not something that going to comment on the details, but certainly we have lots of inbound inquiries, and we believe we have some pretty special projects. So there's really no reason for us at this juncture to enter into a lot of NDAs and open up the kimono. We have some more work and more value to create for our existing shareholders.
Is the spin out of the Canadian assets a possibility to further avoid dilution?
Well, our primary objective isn't our primary objective is to grow resources on a per share basis. So even though we may issue more shares with the financing, is what can you do with that? So we're less focused on our share count versus what are the resources we have on a per share basis. The work we're doing in Finland, we are adding ounces, we believe right now, and our target is to add ounces at far less than $5 per ounce, where the market seems to be paying closer to $30 or $50 per ounce. So we think there's a huge lift for existing shareholders. So if we can spend $1 efficiently and on a relative basis add more ounces on a per share basis, we should be positioning our shareholders very well, and that's what our target is, and I think we're achieving that. So it's not so much about just the share count.
And how is the M&A environment for PGE miners?
It's actually been pretty interesting in the last few years. We've seen the South African miners, given the jurisdictional complexities there, invest their profits elsewhere. And most recently, we saw Impala Mining buy the Lac des Îles, or North American palladium assets in Ontario, a palladium, or actually one of the rare palladium primary producers. And Sibanye-Stillwater previously bought, Sibanye bought Stillwater. So we've seen a shift in those that historically have been big palladium producers from a jurisdictional perspective, seek exposure in better markets, and that's part of what we think we bring to the table here. We are in a very stable European Union country, and we have the mix. And I think there's going to be more activity in this space, but certainly it's a much smaller space than gold. There's thousands of gold companies out there, but these magmatic sulfide deposits are like finding hen's teeth, especially a good one. So there's just, based on numbers, less action going on, but we're certainly trying to position ourselves for that M&A position by having 100% interest in district scale projects that can attract the interest of a much larger company for a development scenario.
Well, Derrick, that is all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us and helping us get a better understanding of the company's story.
Thank you very much, Mark. It was great to see you again.
If you'd like to access our independent research on Palladium One Mining, please go to channelcheck.com and type the company name or the ticker NKORF in the search box located in the top left company data section of the site.
Thank you for joining us for this virtual roadshow presentation brought to you by Channel Check. View our YouTube channel for more video content, including C-suite interviews, virtual roadshows, and conference presentation replays. New content is added regularly, so subscribe below to stay up to date. Visit channelcheck.com or click the link in the description to access equity research, news, and advanced market data on this and 6,000 other small and microcap companies.